evening, everyone. It is now 6:48, and we will call the special meeting in Council Chambers at 6:45, January 14, 2019. Call the meeting to order. Roll call of councillors.
Okay, Richmond County Council special meeting, Monday, January 14th, 2019. Members present, Councillor James Goyage.
Present.
Councillor Alvin Martel.
Present.
Deputy Warden Brian Marchand.
Present.
Councillor Gilbert Boucher. No, absent. And Warden Jason McLean.
Present.
There you go.
Thank you. So the reason for a special council meeting tonight is to invest in Canada Infrastructure Programming Fund application. Director of Public Works has put together a proposal for us this evening. Should I go through the briefing notes, Chris, or did you want to?
It's up to yourself.
Okay. Maybe I can run through that, and then you can maybe pick up from that. So just to run through some briefing notes here for the background. On December 3rd, 2018, the Department of Municipal Affairs, on behalf of the federal and provincial governments, issued a call for applications under the Green Environmental Quality Stream of the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program. The deadline for applications is January 18th, 2019. Under the present call for applications, a project must meet at least one of the following outcomes to be eligible: increased capacity to treat and or manage wastewater and stormwater, increased access to potable water, increased capacity to reduce and or remediate soil and or air pollutants. The Department of Municipal Affairs will accept up to 2 applications per municipality. The funding includes 40% federal contribution and 33.33% provincial contribution, for a total contribution of 73.33%. This round of funding targets projects that can be started in fiscal 2019-20 or 2020-21. The Department of Municipal Affairs believes another round of applications may be forthcoming in the fall of 2019. However, that may change based on this initial round of applications. Capital projects. The municipality's present 5-year capital plan does not contain projects that qualify for this round of funding, with the exception of wastewater project, which is already funded through the Building Canada Small Communities Fund. Municipal Council previously approved an application to the Provincial Capital Assistance Program for the purpose of conducting pre-engineering work for modifications required to the Arishat and Petit de Grasse sewage treatment plants in order to meet the effluent quality requirements stipulated in its operating approvals issued by Nova Scotia Environment. The study has not yet been completed, therefore an application would be premature. There is work required at the Arishat water treatment plant that could qualify for funding. The project involves new equipment for chemical addition of a corrosion inhibitor, upgrades to chemical dosing equipment, replacement of obsolete and inaccurate instrumentation, major repairs of the DAF filter equipment, and all controls work required to interface with the new upgraded equipment and ensure proper operation of the facility. The proposed work is necessary in order to improve organics removal in the raw water, thereby reducing the occurrence of disinfection byproducts, to comply with the regulatory requirements, and to ensure that the plant meets the terms of its operating approval with Nova Scotia Environment. The estimated cost of the project is expected to be $250,000, with the unfunded portion to be funded through the Richmond Water Utility. Wait on that one.
Pardon me?
Should I do that one as well?
Yeah, so you can...
Okay. So recommendations, advice from the the Director of Public Works. Recommend that the municipality proceed with an application to the ICIP for the Arishat water treatment plant upgrade project. And I will just turn the mic over to Chris to see if there's anything that he wanted to add to that.
No, I don't know that I have a lot to add, but I will emphasize that the work that's planned is for 2 primary reasons, one being disinfection byproducts, which have limits that we aren't always meeting, and the other being corrosion control. So every year we do lead testing at homeowners' taps, and it's a measure of the corrosiveness of our water in the distribution system. So our results have shown that our water is corrosive, and we do have to take action. So that's the other half of the project, which is to implement corrosion control program by introducing a corrosion inhibitor. So those are the two issues we're looking to address, both part of our operating approval. If there's any questions.
Any questions for Chris? Deputy Warden?
Thank you, Warden. Chris, the lead issue, is that something to do with our water, or is it to do with the pipes within certain homes or buildings?
So the lead issue, generally it's the corrosiveness of the water results in metals leaching into the water supply from the homeowner's plumbing. So whether that be the pipe that runs, we'll say, from the property boundary to the home, which belongs to the homeowner, or the plumbing within the home. So while we are measuring for lead, it's not something that's in the distribution system, but it comes from the homeowner's plumbing as a result of the corrosiveness of the water. So we do still have an obligation to supply water that is not corrosive, that will not cause those issues.
And my next question is the application ready?
The application, as of today, is largely complete. We need a motion of council, of course, which is why we're here this evening, and I also need the final cost estimates from the consultant. So I have the estimate, but not the breakdown, which is required for the submission.
Okay. If there's no more questions, Warden, I'll make a motion that the director proceed with this application to the ICIP.
It's been moved by the Deputy Warden that the application move forward with regards to the funding request for ICIP, seconded by Councillor Gayesh. Discussion?
Just I noticed in the application the deadline is January 2018.
Oh, and the actual documents put up.
Yeah, I just think it's a mistake, yeah.
Yeah, so the deadline is this Friday.
Deadline this Friday. Okay. Questions been called. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Motion carried. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Need a motion to adjourn?
It's been moved by Deputy Warden to adjourn the special council meeting. Seconded by Councillor Martel. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Meeting adjourned.
What does he speak of?
It's now 7:03. We will call a meeting to order, the Committee of the Whole for January 14th, 2019. Are there any items to be added to the agenda by council by unanimous consent? No items to be added to the agenda? Okay, we will move along. Motion to approve the agenda as presented? Moved by Councillor Martel. Seconder? Seconded by Councillor Gayesh. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Motion carry. Agenda approved. So in your package, you did receive the minutes from the December 19th, 2018 meeting. Is there any discussion topics or any errors or omissions that should be made from our last meeting? It's been moved by Councillor Martel that the meetings be accepted as presented. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Gayesh. Discussion? Deputy Warden?
I just have a question in regards to the food for children. Excuse me. Were we saying exactly in the motion that we were just approving it through the activity fund, or were we saying they have to put an application in through the activity fund? Just want clarification on that.
I think that they had a previous ask of council, and I think that, I just don't think it went through at that time, but then the discussion was, I believe, that $500 would be put together from the activity fund.
but they would apply, it would come back to us? Is that how you were?
Well, we were looking for an avenue to give the money because it wasn't budgeted, so my suggestion was that
Your mic,
we go
the mic for the camera, for the viewing
My
audience?
suggestion was that we go to the activity fund in order to be able to pay for it.
But are they going to put an application in, or is it just going to be, is it not going to come through us? Because there was no application,
There was no application.
and it seems that, or granting a request in the amount of 500, that it be approved and the funds come from the activity fund. So there was no formal request. There was no application.
Right.
So are we going to make them come through an application, or is this, when we approve this, is this actual?
No, that's
They've
a
gotten the
good
grant.
point. They did do a presentation, but I don't think there was ever any formal application, so perhaps we could contact and just have them go through the process of doing an application. Everybody good with that?
And then it comes back to us?
Then it comes back to us. Okay.
Thank you.
Any further questions been called? All those in, all those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Motion carried. Item 4 on the agenda, a presentation from Mr. John Bain of the Eastern District Planning Commission regarding dangerous and unsightly premises.
Thank you, Warden. There's a staff report in your package that I've presented to council before, but I thought it would be helpful just to go over that. The staff report really sets out the process in a flow diagram at the back of the staff report that goes right from the complaint to the various checklists that we have to go through, depending on different evaluations along the way. And so, and the staff report also, what I've done is put in examples from files we've had in the past of properties where we got a complaint and we determined that it was neither dangerous nor unsightly, situations which we considered to be unsightly, situations that we consider to be dangerous, and situations that we consider to be immediately dangerous. And the Act gives council and me as your administrator of dangerous and unsightly premises significant powers. And so we try as much as possible to be careful in the use of those powers. Basically, we can tear down people's homes, and we have done that in the past, tore down people's homes. So I think this council is well aware that as much as possible, I try to approach this aspect of my job with a degree of care and compassion for those who find themselves in these situations. Often it's a case, and I've used this illustration before council before, if I came to you and told you, any person on council, and told you that you have a dangerous and unsightly premises, and that there was a possibility the municipality was going to tear it down, with all of your problems, that is going to go right to the top of your issues that you have. A lot of the people that I'm dealing with, when I tell them that, it doesn't even break into the top 10 of the problems that they're dealing with, right? So I do try to have respect for them as fellow human beings, and show some care and compassion in this aspect of the job. The rebuttal to that I've often heard is, well, what about the neighbors who have to put up with that? I understand that. And so there is a process, and we follow the process. The process is very clear. But there's no reason in my mind that I can't still approach the job with care and compassion. So right from the top of that handout in the back of your staff report, we receive a complaint, and the very first thing we do once we receive a written complaint, now that's something that is important for this council to understand, that your policy says that if any councillor or any member of staff receives a complaint, they are to direct that person to me. Council or staff are not supposed to be filling out complaint forms. That's your policy. Now, councillors have in the past signed those and given them in, and they've said they've been doing that as private citizens, not as councillors, but they're sending them in. And it puts staff in an awkward position because your policy is clear that councillors or staff are to direct complainants to me as the administrator of dangerous and unsightly premises. So right at the beginning, that's something that needs to be considered. Victoria County Council, for example, with exactly the same policy, changed it to allow councillors to make complaints. But they also say in their policy that if a councillor makes a complaint, that they declare a conflict of interest and they're not involved with any discussion on that matter. And that's important because Councillor Gloria McCluskey, former mayor of Dartmouth, HRM councillor, made a complaint to HRM staff to tear down a building, and they acted on that, and then when it got to court, Councillor McCluskey was reprimanded, and he threw the whole thing out because she should not have made the complaint and then being part of the decision-making later on. So Victoria County has changed that in their policy to allow for councillors to make complaints, but if you do, you have to declare conflict. So we receive a complaint. The very first thing I do is I send out one of my building inspectors, typically, to go and take a look at it, and at that point he makes a decision. Is it dangerous and unsightly or is it not? If it's not, he closes the file. We don't follow up on it anymore. It's over. But if it is dangerous, then he's got another decision to make. Is it immediately dangerous, or is it just dangerous? Because if a building inspector determines that the issue is immediately dangerous, then we have to act. Once we're aware, we're obligated to act. And my experience has been that Friday afternoon on a long weekend is typically when you get these complaints about, about dangerous, immediately dangerous situations. And so an example of immediate dangerous situation, an open well, where there's evidence of children playing in the area. We get in contact with the closest contractor and get him to fill it. I had one in Bedeck just recently, and the contractor covered it with pallets. He put pallets over it, and then he covered it with gravel so that there was a mound over the well, and it was, you could use that well. He basically was able to salvage the well for a later more, because we had to deal with that building as well, separate from that. So there are ways to deal with immediately dangerous situations, depending on the situation. The other ones are typically houses that are structurally unsound, and again, evidence that there are children or people in the area. I think I've told this council before about a situation where I was on a site with Harry. Harry went into the site ahead of me, up the stairs, and he stuck his head above the stairs, and he turned to me and said, "John, we need to get out of this building now." So I don't argue with Harry. Got out of there as quickly as possible. But what had happened is somebody was salvaging the boards, and they were not professionals, and basically they had cut every beam in the building, and salvaged all the good, so there was nothing holding that that building up. And we had somebody take that down within the day. We did that with the church here on the island. There's an old abandoned church that was really weather stormed recently, weather damaged in a storm, and we had that taken down immediately. So immediate is pretty clear. You know, I get a professional opinion from a guy, from one of my guys, and we take it down. We deal with the immediate danger. And the act and the case law is very clear on that, is if you decided it's immediately dangerous and don't do anything, and then come back, a month later and tear it down under the immediate danger provisions, you're opening yourself up to liability in that situation, because if it was immediately dangerous, why'd you wait a month? So we're very, the Act gives you the powers, and we exercise those powers expeditiously. But if there's not immediate danger, then the next thing is whether or not, what are our options, right? So one of the options is demolition, the other option is repair. Our remedies are typically an order to demolish, an order to repair, or an order to remove. And removal would be derelict vehicles, garbage on a site. So we would go on, we would send orders. The difference between an order to demolish and an order to remedy the condition using any other method is that if we issue an order, a 30-day order to clean up a property or to remove vehicles or to demolish, not to demolish, but to do any of the other remedies, we give them the order, and then they've got a 30 days to, or a number of days to appeal to council. But a demolition order is almost a forced appeal, because what happens with the demolition order, and of course council's aware of this, is we come to council with the pre-demolition order. The owners of the property are given an opportunity to be here, and then council has, you can't delegate the demolition of a building. So the worst ones, the most difficult ones, the ones we have the most problem with are cleanup orders. And so we go up, and there's some method, there's some amount of compliance, and you go back and there's more compliance, and sometimes there's not compliance, so we do it, and then you go back and close the file, and then a year back they're hoarding again or whatever's on the property, and then we're called back again. So those ones seem to continue. I don't know if that presentation answers your questions. In the staff report, I've given you examples of buildings that were tore down, buildings that were determined to be neither dangerous nor unsightly. And the immediate danger one that I've shown you there is the open foundation in Port Hawkesbury on Granville Street, where we had that filled in the next day. So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Thank you, John. Any questions for John Bain? Deputy Warden?
Thank you, Warden. John, thanks for the presentation. It was enlightening. And I admire you on the compassionate part, for sure. I was always one when it comes to demolishing or tearing them down. I always have a hard time kind of voting against most of them. But, John, in the policy itself, item 8, that says the administrator shall have discretion whether to investigate complaints which are made anonymously or where the complainant refuses to put a complaint in writing. When the complainants are the neighbors, which normally are the neighbors, have an issue putting it in, and we call you as counselors, there, to me, says that you can go and let us know if you think this will go to the next step. And that's where I have a difficulty. It seems that we differ on exactly where we proceed with when a verbal complaint or when a counselor tries to put a complaint in. So, if the neighbor has an issue with the neighboring property and doesn't want to put the complaint, it just never can get put in. So, I'm in favor of definitely doing with Victoria. We need to put it in where we as counselors can fill them in. I believe that's our obligation to do, and I have no issue with stating a conflict when it does come to council. But to that number 8, John, what's your comments on that?
Thank you, Deputy Warden. Clause 8 was put in there, and I wrote this, all the policies for all of them, to deal with immediately dangerous situations. And so what happens, and the one that I gave you the example of with Harry, the guy calls and he says, if there's a windstorm, there's kids playing around that building is going to fall down, somebody's going to get killed, right? Are you going to put that in writing? I'm not going to put it on writing, but you now know, and I've told you, that that building is immediately dangerous and kids could get killed. Okay. I send someone right away. I didn't wait for him to, and that's why that discretion is there, right? And that's not for somebody complaining about their neighbor and them saying, well, I don't want to fill in your complaint form. It was specifically designed to deal with those immediate dangers.
Let me clarify, John. It's not the neighbor. We'll say the neighboring property, because I've spoken to you about a property that there's some signs of rot. Now, it's not for me to say the next windstorm is going to take that building down. There's signs of rot in the building. There's some, the basement's kind of open, and the neighbor does not want to put the complaint form in. And I think I've sent you an email way back in late summer, and I don't know if you've gone to look at it. Maybe I haven't stressed. I don't want to be the one to say this building's coming down in the next windstorm, because I don't feel I have the ability to do that, because this may withstand hurricanes. I don't know.
Right.
So I will not be the one to say this is dangerous to the point it's coming down in the next windstorm, but there are signs of rot. The underlying sections of the building are open. So I would like you to either be able to look at it or have some mechanism where I can put the complaint in as a counselor. So
Right. So I think this is we've discussed this on different occasions. My feeling is if it's dangerous enough, the neighbors will put a complaint in, and if they don't, that's what our policy's for. If council wishes to amend their policy to allow counselors to make the complaints, then I will follow your policy. Obviously, I will follow your policy. But I think as far as that discretion, that was written for immediately dangerous provisions, and I don't know that I've ever received any immediately dangerous ones in writing. My neighbor's well is open, the kids were playing hockey, the ball went into the field and disappeared into the old septic field, it's open. Who does something about that? I don't say at that point, here's my form, fill it out, and I'll send somebody. You're listening for key words, right? And if they say it's immediately dangerous, well, then I don't even have to look for the key words because they've used the wording of the act. But if they are talking to me and they're telling me stuff like that, we're going to respond immediately, and that is wise and prudent, I think, because that's the way the act has been designed to be provide that safety for the.
Okay, so let me get this straight. The neighbor can call, block their number, tell you this property is dangerous, and you're going to go there and look at it at least and give me a report?
Counselor, I deal with people in good faith. So if you're going to go tell people, just tell them it's dangerous. Yes,
they somewhat feel that there's some dangers to the property.
Then they should fill out the form.
But they or I can't say it's coming down in the windstorm. We're not going
If they
that
feel
far.
it's dangerous, it's dangerous on unsightly premises, they should fill out the form.
But you've looked at them without the form filled.
I have, if we feel that there's an immediate danger, that's a discretion that we make, and then we send somebody out.
I guess I thought that something was coming to us with the changes kind of outlaid as what Victoria County had. If a motion is needed, I'd make the motion unless there's other comments, that I would like those kind of things added into this policy, so we as councillors can avert these time delays and fill the form and send it off. To have some sort of inspection done by our administrator of dangerous and unsightly premises. I'll make a motion that, similar to what Victoria County, maybe John can give us, he sent us the exact wording many, many months ago. Maybe we
Yeah,
need
well,
to
and I
revisit it.
I do have the Victoria County wording in front of me if you want me to read that.
Okay, that would be good, John, if the warden so wishes.
Yes.
Yep.
So it's, so the clause number 3 is exactly the same as yours, but then it has a 3A or a 4 now. In the instance where a complaint of allegations of dangerous or unsightly premises contrary to the MGA is submitted by a municipal councillor, the councillor shall declare a conflict of interest and remove themselves from all discussion and/or council decisions relative to the complaint.
Okay, I'll make a motion that that gets added, and we go through the proper procedure of altering this policy so that it reflects that if everyone else is okay with it.
Anybody
you, Warden.
want any clarification on,
I have some questions there.
Real- related specifically to this part, or do you want to,
To the presentation that John gave.
okay, do you want to make the motion now, or would you like
I
to?
can make it after.
Yeah. Okay.
It's no issue.
Okay, we'll hold off on the motion for now, and okay, Councillor Boucher?
Thank you, Warden McLean. John, thank you for the presentation, but it's nothing new. I've dealt with the unsightly dangerous premises bylaw for the last, since 1975. It was in the National Building Code before there was any planning. And it was very clear, and at that time, we had one of the best lawyers in Nova Scotia, a fellow by the name of Vert Pickup, who knew the law inside out. Now, we always accepted, it didn't matter if it was council, or if it was the warden, or whoever it was, came in and complained. We didn't ask them to sign their name to anything. We went out and we done our job. Now, that's the first part. The second part is that I've complained personally to your department about some properties in my district, and I've never heard back from you people, which I don't think is very respectful. When I put my neck out on the line in my district to complain about something and sign a form, I expect somebody to get back to me. And I don't want to find out on the street 4 months later that the property was never touched and somebody gave somebody a 6-month extension. I don't know where the 6 months ever come in. But I think you fellas should get your act straight before you come telling council what they should be doing. Thank you.
Did you want to respond to that, John, or
No, I don't
Okay.
think there's any point in responding to that.
if I just... No, but one of the things, and in fairness to this conversation, we're talking about specific times when councillors have put in complaints, and I have no idea when policies were made or weren't made, but according to the policy that currently exists, this council does not have the option of putting in a complaint. So if that's the biggest issue, and that's the thing that we have to deal with, then obviously if this council feels that we're going to change the policy, then that's what we have to do. And if there's going to be a motion made tonight to adopt something very similar to Victoria County, because of the fact that councillors want to be able to put in that form and not violating policy, then that's what we need to do. Any further questions on Mr. Bain's presentation? Councillor Gayesh?
Yes, I agree with you, Mr. Warden. I think I've dealt with on numerous occasions with the department, and I know the new policies exist whereby councillors cannot, in any time, put in a complaint. It has to be the resident himself. I don't agree with that system, definitely not. I'm a counselor in an area whereby taxpayers depend on your counselor to do the complaints. When they call me and say, what about this property next door that's unsightly, they expect me to do the work on their behalf. That's why I've been elected. And I agree that this is something that, a policy that says councillors cannot, and I think I agree with you, we have to change the policy. And I don't regard, if I complain against any property in my district, I don't think I should have to declare a conflict. I depend on the department, your department, John, which I feel you're doing a very good job. I depend on your department to come up with a reasonable solution, or say, James, I don't regard this as unsightly. I don't regard this as dangerous. Therefore, then I'm satisfied that I went through the proper procedure, and I can go back to my taxpayer who complained and say, listen, I put your complaint in, and it was regarded as not being unsightly, because unsightly is in the eyes of a beholder. I can say this is unsightly and not necessarily unsightly. So I am willing, and I agree with Deputy Warden, that we have to change the policy whereby councillors are able to complain about unsightly premises. There's some in my area that I shouldn't wait until a taxpayer comes to me and says, this is unsightly. I'm not blind so far, and I can see it myself, and I should be able to, as a councillor, complain if I see something that I feel is unsightly and dangerous, and complain to your department, and not have to declare a conflict. If it's unsightly and dangerous, that means that it's something that should be dealt with. I don't have to declare a conflict, because it is something that's dangerous and unsightly. And I don't see where the courts can say, James, you're in a conflict to complain about something that's detrimental to the community that I live in, or to ratepayers in my district. I find that ridiculous. But I agree that we got to follow policies. The bylaws exist, and I'm willing to change the bylaw whereby councillors can complain on any issue. But I don't want to declare a conflict if I bring in something, an unsightly premise. I don't think that's just on my part. I got to represent the taxpayers. That's my job.
Well, Counselor, I'm not a lawyer, but I know that Counselor, her name just went out of my mind.
McCluskey.
It did cause the whole process to be voided by the courts. And I think the point is that you are making the complaint, and then when it comes to council, you're being judge and jury. You're making a determination on your own complaint. So I know what you're saying. If it's just if we go and take a look at it and make a determination, and it doesn't come to council, well, there's no conflict. But if it comes to council and you've got a system in place where the homeowner can come, so we make a presentation, we're saying it's dangerous and it should be demolished. That's our presentation. Council is now going to hear from the owner, and they're going to make a presentation to council saying, I don't think it should be tore down because I've got an engineer who looked at it, or whatever, A, B, and C, and then council makes a decision, and the complainant votes in favor of that demolition. Again, I'm not a lawyer, but I would think that you're going to put yourself in exactly the same situation that Councillor McCluskey did, and it's just as easy to sit away from the table and let your fellow councillors make that decision, because you've made the complaint and you're making that determination.
Well, I have to disagree with you.
Yeah, I'm not a lawyer, but
I know the lawyers.
Your mic. Get your mic.
Thank you.
Thank you, Warden McLean. I guess what I want to do is just tell the panel here that in my day, the building inspector went around and he inspected all the properties, and when he found an unsightly property, he wrote up an order himself to clean up the mess for 30 days, and if that didn't work, then he went to our solicitors, and Lord and behold, you end up in court. So if the District Planning Commission has a building inspector, I would suggest that he get out of his office and drive around the county and find these things himself. We pay the District Planning Commission a lot of money. I don't think we're getting any service out of them. Well, I'm sure when that's going on, the councillors have to take the initiative here to sign paperwork and everything for unsightly premises. That's not fair to the councillor.
But there's a lot of layers to this, so it's not just one specific problem, and I might suggest to council that we do have a bylaw committee coming up on the 21st. That's why we have a bylaw committee, so I think maybe that for next Monday evening, item number 1 on the agenda, maybe we could deal with this specific item and have discussions and figure out exactly what it is that we want, because there's some concerns with regards to whether or not the councillor should have to declare a conflict, and all of that needs to be discussed, and that all has to be figured out. So if council is okay with referring that to the bylaw committee, I think that maybe that would be the wise thing to do. But I will get back to Councillor Goyesh just to finish off your statement.
Oh, okay. Am I on?
Yep.
Yeah, the only thing is, I'm not against I'm not saying this against the District Planning Commission or anybody or whoever's doing this or that. The only thing I'm saying is that I feel as a councillor that I have to represent the people in my district. That's all I'm saying. And I know there are circumstances whereby McCluskey, maybe she did do something that wasn't appropriate, but that doesn't put the whole thing in proper perspective, whereby I'm not going to come in, and I depend on the staff that we've employed, the District Planning Commission. If I make a complaint, it's not up to me to determine that this property is unsightly or dangerous. It's up to the commission that I complained about. You make the decision. If you come back and say, Councillor Goyesh, we deemed and we decided this property is not dangerous and not unsightly, then I accept your professionalism in your business and what you have decided. Then I can go back to the person that complained to me and say, listen, I followed the proper procedure. I complained about the complaint. I went to the proper channels, and it's not unsightly and it's not dangerous. Then I'm satisfied. But most of the people in my district, people don't like to complain on their own. That's why they elect a representative, a councillor, or something that they want to say, that's your job, and it is my job. I don't think they should have to complain personally. That's why I'm elected, to represent them. And that's all I'm saying. And I'm not against the departments or any department. All I want, the ability for me to represent the taxpayers that I do represent, and come back and say, listen, I done my job. I went to the District Planning Commission to do the building inspection process, and they deemed that this was not unsightly, not dangerous, and that's it. That's all I'm saying. And if we have to change the policy, Mr. Warden, I agree that we have to look at this in the bylaw committee and do the proper, proceed with the proper channels and change whatever we have to do. Thank you.
Well, and I think maybe just to add to that point, we have a solicitor for a reason, so I think that's going to be a good question with regards to whether or not, and run that exact scenario by him just to see what he has to say, because there could very well be a recommendation from the solicitor on that. Councillor Martel?
Yes, thank you. I really agree with the fact that we should refer this to the policy committee because of the fact that
Bylaw committee.
Sorry, because I mean, if you looked at what's been said here tonight, there's a lot of layers, and when it comes to making complaints and signing your name to forms, that means that at some point you could be liable if this proceeds to court in a matter where somebody needs to be sued. And as you know now, it's coming more and more prevalent here in Canada than it is in the States, that when you get sued, everybody gets sued. So I've been here 16 years. I've never signed my name on a form unless it was my personal recommendation to have it done. And I'm certainly not going to start now before I know that I'm not going to be responsible for anything legally if somebody else fails to complain and I do on their behalf. Thank you.
Any further points? Deputy Warden?
So you're saying that I shouldn't make the motion tonight then to have that added? I mean, I think it's straight and forward. The one issue is whether we want to declare a conflict or not, but I think we do need it sooner rather than later. That a councillor, very clear, is able to put the complaint in. Very simple. Done.
There's obviously more to it than that, because we've just spent the last 15 minutes discussing some of the complexities that might come with that. So I think if we're going to make a motion, and it can still happen for our next council meeting, if we get together as a bylaw committee on Monday night, we could still bring.
The issue of deciding if you're in a conflict or not, that's a personal decision to any councillor at any point, if they feel they're in a conflict. And if Gloria's vote was the deciding vote, I can see where a judge could say, well, you made this go one way or another. But if 5 agreed to the recommendation that would be forthcoming from the EDPC or the administrator, I can't see how a judge would say, but hey, things aren't black and white for sure.
Well,
Nonetheless, I don't like to have this delayed, because I have a complaint that's been on the go for months, so.
I would prefer to seek legal advice with regards to if there's anything there with regards to a conflict. If a councillor is going to put their name on a form and then speak of it when it comes to council, you're either in a conflict or you're not. And I think seeking legal advice on that is probably a wise decision. And I really, if it's only going to be, if the motion is made tonight, it's still coming to council in 2 weeks. If we have a decision, we get together on the 21st, so that is happening between now and then, so we can still bring.
Yeah, well, I'd prefer to make the motion that we make the addition as per John, and it can be changed.
That's your decision. No, he didn't formally make a motion, so your decision. If you want to make a motion, by all means.
I'll make that motion that we add to this, and we go through the proper procedure of making a change to such policy, so that this gets done. I have no issue with declaring a conflict, none whatsoever.
So by doing that, that is coming to the bylaw committee. So the motion is to bring this to the bylaw committee at our next meeting. Is that correct?
That wasn't my motion. My motion was to add as per what John said. From Victoria County. That was my motion, initially. We can still discuss it at the bylaw committee. We can still have legal advice. This is a recommendation to council. We still have to go through the procedure to have this policy changed. There's notice that has to be given. We still have to go. And all I'm doing is I want to start this process. We can meet about it, and it will be another 3 months before anything gets done with it. This should have been changed months and months and years ago. Because I know I put complaints in, I know I've signed some, and they've gone through. My motion is to recommendation that we go through the steps to add what John is saying to this policy, the dangerous and unsightly policy. That's all. It will be discussed at our meeting, because even though we make the recommendation this evening, it doesn't mean, it's not an approved recommendation until council. So that's my motion. If there's a seconder, fine. If there's not, doesn't matter. I've made the motion that I want us to go through the steps that are necessary to add, to make the alterations that's been done in Victoria County.
Right, but in part of that, like if we're doing this as according to proper procedure, that in fact the proper procedure is that to come to the bylaw committee for all of council.
Then be it so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Moved by Deputy Warden, and I don't know how the name I got, I'm going to repeat all of that, but to adopt the,
See you at the bylaw committee.
Well, what's the motion?
motion,
I want me to say it again?
sure.
Be very simple. As long as you're ready.
Hit the mic.
Okay, your mic, Brian?
I hit it.
The motion is to have the process, and if the process is you want to go to the bylaw committee, then fine. I just want this started sooner rather than later. The motion is to have our policy for dangerous and unsightly amended as per what the administrator has read for Victoria County.
No.
To our policy.
Okay.
And you just vote against it if you don't.
Well, we don't just refer to the bylaw committee, we're going to
Okay.
give it there and get
Okay, we
all
don't, there's no need of discussion. The motion has been made. We're looking for a
Been made.
seconder.
Question. I second.
Okay, so the motion by Deputy Warden is that the bylaw be amended to reflect that of Victoria County. It's been seconded by Councillor Boucher. Discussion. Question's been called. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Opposed? Motion carried.
I don't understand the motion.
Okay, so what we accepted is that there's been a motion on the floor to adopt the Victoria County bylaw that they have. So it's going to come to our bylaw committee
Oh, okay.
on Monday night, the 21st.
Motion's been made to change it.
That's not the,
That's not the motion. That's what the motion is. The motion's got nothing to do with going to the bylaw committee.
That doesn't make any difference.
They're going there,
because
but-
we're going to the bylaw committee.
everybody should put their mics on.
We can deal with that on Monday night.
That's not the motion.
You just changed the policy.
Okay. Thank you, John.
If you want me to have bylaw committee, just let me know.
Thank you.
But I'll give Yvonne the wording for that.
Okay, sounds good. There's copies, yeah. Yeah. Okay, moving on to item 5. CAO. Turn the mic over.
Okay, there we go. Okay, so just a brief presentation to bring folks in the gallery up to speed of what we have, and then we'll turn it over for discussion and feedback. Got it up on the screen?
Committee appointing approvals,
Strategic plan presentation. That was it.
Is it up on his screen?
On your screen, George.
yeah.
Got it?
You can send us that presentation.
Hmm?
Can you send us that presentation?
I don't have my laptop, but it's on the screen there.
Just so we have it.
So the Richmond County Strategic Plan, the proposed one is a comprehensive 5-year plan designed to identify a municipal vision complete with actions and key priorities to drive growth in the municipality. And in order for the community to grow, there must be an ability to create sustainable employment, retain and attract business, ensure effective and healthy community development, and provide a quality lifestyle, and make sure educational and skills development is available. So planning for the future, this plan recognizes the importance of identifying priorities and action steps to enable a planned and directed path for growth. It's not inclusive, it's a fluid document, but it is a guideline, and it is solid governance, and it's focused on objectives and goals that can spur community and economic growth and sustainability. There are overall growth points for focus. It's jobs, population, and revenue. And so the plan will focus on the actions most needed to drive the municipality forward while creating growth opportunities through strategic partnerships with private enterprise, entrepreneurs, and governments. So there's 5 key priorities in the plan. Number 1 is grow the economy, and there are many subgroups to that. Number 2 is grow the tourism industry. Number 3, invest in infrastructure. Priority number 4 is nurture healthy and active communities. And number 5 priority is inform and engage citizens. And so going forward, once the plan is adopted, there will be regular progress updates through our Reflections newsletter. Plus, there will be periodic highlights and initiatives that would be communicated to our citizens in the county, and there would be district town hall meetings. And that essentially brings us to the end of that, and we just leave it open for each councillor has a copy of the plan, and I'm sure they've reviewed that, and we're open for questions.
Comments or questions with regards to the strategic plan for CAO? Deputy Warden?
Oh, jeez.
The issue of jobs, I guess, is very important, job creation, but I have an issue with growing the tourism industry. If that's where we intend to increase the jobs, I worry what we will spend in that, so I do have some issue with that, and a plan that's based on potentially, 100 people with surveys and comments, I think we need to be very careful. It's definitely not a plan of the whole of Richmond County. Thank you.
Thank you. Further comments, questions? Councillor Goyesh?
I think we have to move forward, and the plan to me is a very precise and documented, and I think it's been a lot of work put into it. We went to different sessions right through Richmond County, and I think everybody in Richmond County had the opportunity to participate in these sessions, and it's a document whereby it's a 5-year plan. And I don't think it's anything that's going to happen tomorrow. It's a 5-year plan, and council has the responsibility as an elected body to go through. And I think what we have to do is accept the plan. Whatever's in the plan doesn't mean that you have to implement the whole plan in any kind of stages. There are priorities set, and be it job creation, which is the most important part that people in Richmond County are looking at. And part of the job creation is an economic base, which involves also tourism in Richmond County. And it doesn't mean that we have to spend $2 billion tomorrow or anything. We have to accept the plan and look at it in the next year to see where we prioritize this plan and see where we want to go in the future. And I think that the whole process of it was to get the public involved. They were involved, and they gave us some direction. And we're not going to implement everything that the public wants. But I think we have a guideline. It's a plan, just something to guide us in the future. And that's what planning is all about. And I think we have to accept this plan as such and then move forward. And I think we're too long going according to what happened in the past. Let's move ahead as municipal government for the benefit of Richmond County as a whole.
Any further comments? Councillor Boucher?
Thank you, Warden. Well, I went through some of the plan. The plan, to me, is pretty broad. But I agree with Councillor Gayash that, we can't implement everything that's in the plan. I think the plan has to be implemented in stages, and I think we have to know before we start what stages we're going at right away. And when do you expect to submit this plan to the province? Thank you.
So, I believe the plan for the plan was for, obviously council was provided a copy last week, asked to go through it on the weekend, and then if there were any topics of discussion, that happened tonight, in hopes that this draft version be passed at regular council at the end of the month. So, and I believe as soon as it becomes from draft to actual document, then the province is made aware that that's complete.
That's right.
Councillor Martel?
Yeah, I certainly read the document, and I'm very impressed with the work that's been done. Strategic plans are always broad in nature, and but I agree with Councillor Boucher that I think the biggest part is going to be once the plan is accepted, and we have to accept the plan. To make it a plan is to be able to prioritize and do within our budget line and see what we can afford to do in what year and what we can do. And I think that was the goal behind it all. But I certainly think that the plan is well thought out, it's well presented, and I'm certainly in favor of making a motion that we accept this plan as presented. And once it's accepted, then when we go into a budget, then we'll look at what it is we can do in year 1 and year 2, and so on. Thank you.
Make it a motion?
Yeah, that's correct. That's how it works.
Motion's been made by Councillor Martel to accept the strategic plan as presented, seconded by Councillor Gayesh. On discussion?
Question.
I would like to just maybe add I would certainly like to compliment staff and the CAO for all the work that they did. Had a very busy time. They had their traveling road show and meeting in the majority of the communities that we have, and certainly appreciate all those in the public who took some time out to join the sessions and offer their input, which obviously has been taken into consideration because points of view from those meetings is reflected from page 5 all the way up to page 100. So agreed with the comments that are made. It's a fantastic document. I think that everything has been captured very nicely. And part of the document, when it was put together, there are action steps for each of the ideas behind that. So it really will be a very nice guiding document for council over the next couple of years, highlighting a lot of the priorities that the public say that they want us to be working on. So I'm very appreciative of all the efforts with regards to that. So thank you. Question on the motion? All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. James? Okay, contraminded? Motion carried. Approval. Yeah.
Okay, it's done.
When will this be released to the public? Because none of the public has gotten to see this yet.
Correct. Yeah, this will be released to the public, so this will come to
When?
council for final approval at the end of the month. And as
Okay.
soon as it gets approved through council, it will be available for public viewing.
Public viewing then.
Yep.
Okay.
Excuse me. You're saying that this hasn't been released to the public? To any part of the public? Anybody?
This document?
Yeah.
No.
It's not an approved document. It'll be approved.
Was released to somebody.
Yeah.
Somebody hadn't seen it.
Jeez, we can't control that.
Okay, moving on to committee appointees approval.
Okay, so the appointments for committees, they were advertised as per our policies. We were looking for two members at large for the Planning Advisory Committee. We do have two people that have applied, and they have been screened and they are qualified. One is a previous member, actually I think both are previous members. A Mr. Doug Begg is one, and the other one is Mr. Robert Wombold. On the other committee was the Audit Committee. There was one position as member at large. There was one person that had put forward their name for the committee, and they have been screened and reviewed, and all three of these nominees for members at large meet the criteria, and so we would recommend those to council for approval.
Is there two for the PAC? We're accepting
Two for PAC. Yeah. They should be three-year appointments.
Would that go to the end of council?
Well, it's council's choice.
Okay. It's been moved by Councillor Boucher that we accept the three recommendations to the committees, two to the PAC and one to the audit. Seconded by Councillor Martel. Discussion? Question's been called. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Contraminded?
No.
You're a yay? Okay. CAO with regards to the Fougere Point Road.
Yeah, there is a report from our Director of Public Works, and I'll hand it over to Chris to update folks on this report.
Thank you. So back in October, Municipal Council requested a report from municipal staff advising on the feasibility and estimated cost to service Fougere Point Road with municipal sewer to accommodate sewer connections for 3 vacant lots and 1 lot that presently has a dwelling on it serviced by existing on-site sewage disposal system. So the 4 lots in question are noted in the document. Upon further inspection, it doesn't look like gravity connection to the existing homes is possible, which is likely why it was omitted when the services were first extended. So we looked at 2 possible options for servicing. One would be a conventional sewage lift station, and the second would be using a low-pressure sewer system discharging into the last manhole on Fougere Point Road. So some cost estimates were put together for both scenarios. So under option 1 with the sewage lift station, complete with force main and a collection system, the total cost is estimated to be $180,000, which would come out to $45,000 per connection based on the, I guess, the four lots that had expressed interest. Option 2, using a low-pressure sewer system, and to explain what that is, that's a small force main or low-pressure force main that would be installed along with homeowners requiring high head pumps. So it's not a conventional system, but it is used a fair bit in development. So in this case, the cost would be $60,000 or $15,000 per connection. However, the type of pump required for that type of installation is about $8,000, and that cost would be to the homeowner. It's a privately owned and maintained pump. So essentially, you have 2 options, option 1 and 2. The second has a higher cost for the homeowner, but is a much lower capital cost. In potential funding options, we did inquire with the Department of Municipal Affairs. And generally, when you're looking for funding to expand to undeveloped lots, it's not generally given high priority. However, it can qualify. The only stipulation being that in order to get your portion of the funding from the funding agencies, those lots do end up having to be developed before you can get your contributing funds. And I did make a note, bylaw 29 does deal with sewer extensions. And the proper procedure generally is to have a petition signed by the persons owning the majority of the frontage on the public road and accompanying a sum of $25 from each owner. who signs the petition. So that's generally the process that we should follow according to the bylaw. And if council orders the installation of said sewer, the bylaw stipulates that the costs incurred are to be paid by the owners fronting the street in proportion to the length of serviceable frontage, which is also defined in the bylaw. And the maximum frontage fee in the bylaw is noted at $40 per foot. However, the bylaw also says that the cost per linear foot has to equal to the cost of the project. So when the bylaw was created, I can only assume that $40 per foot would cover a significant portion of the capital cost, where today it wouldn't be able to cover the total cost. So we would have to reconcile the difference between what the bylaw says and where the cost would come in that case. In alternatives to what's being proposed, the only feasible alternative to municipal sewer is to use on-site sewage disposal systems. So you'll notice we did attach a diagram showing where the services stop on Fougere Point Road. Apologies if you can't make it out, but you'll see the 4 lots were highlighted, and they're on the right-hand side of the page. And if you look just slightly to the left, you'll see a dashed line, which is showing our gravity sewer, the existing gravity sewer. You can also see topographical data, but essentially, excuse me, the land slopes away from the existing sewer in that location, so that's why these lots would be more challenging to service and do require some pumping in one way, shape, or form. If there's any questions.
Thank you, Chris. Any questions for Councillor Boucher?
Thank you, Warden. Chris, I'm just wondering, do you have a recommendation in these quotes you've got? What would you recommend the council do?
If council was going to proceed with servicing it, my recommendation would be to go with option 2. Clearly, it is a lower cost option, but as far as whether to do it or not, I don't have a recommendation in that regard.
Okay. So the total cost will be bared by the property owners?
As the bylaw is presently written, absent external funding, it would be borne by the property owners. That's correct. But there is a process to follow where we should have it petitioned properly if we're going to take it to council.
Is that we don't install water and sewer for people at the taxpayers' expense. So, yeah. Thank you, Chris.
You're welcome.
Further questions? Councillor Martel? Or, sorry, Councillor Goyesh?
No, I made the request to make a study on this, and before anything is done, I'd have to go back to the actual persons that did request this sewer extension. But Chris, from what I understand right here, is that it will cost approximately $23,000 without funding for each unit. And if I look at the funding process according to what we have here, it would still come to about $15,000 per household. Does that make any sense? Am I in the right ballpark?
It would depend on the funding program. If we applied for
well,
PCAP
I'm looking
funding,
at the 50%.
Yeah, so in that scenario would be half of the $60,000 would be covered in that scenario, so there would be $30,000 remaining, plus the cost of $8,000 per homeowner, approximately, for the type of pump that would be required.
Okay, that's what I'm looking at. I included the 8,000. 8,000 with it would be 15 without the funding and 23. 15 with funding and 23 without the funding.
Thereabouts, yes. Yeah.
Thereabouts estimate. Well, before we move, and I thank you very much for doing the survey, but I'd have to go back to the property owners that did request this kind of survey and see what their feeling is before we proceed any further with anything.
You're not seeking a motion this evening?
Well, what kind of motion can I make? I gotta go back to the people that did request that we did do a study on this on the sewer, and it would be premature until I get an answer back.
It was for information purpose only.
It was for information from the Public Works Department.
Good.
And I thank you, Chris, for the information, and I'll get back to council.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councilor Martel?
Chris, just wondering, I'm looking at the diagram, and it seems to be all downhill from where the other sewer system is coming in. Have you ever given any thought to each individual sewer system into a cluster system, like we had talked about way back when in the other districts, where you'd have a cluster system and everybody will be gravity fed into that system?
There's no bylaw that would allow that presently, but if council were looking at new construction and wanted to service it with on-site, then clusters could be an option when there's multiple homes in one area.
Well, if you look at the landscape and the way that the flow would be, it's kind of something that you think that might work for them in that area. So, just a thought.
Further questions?
Thank you, Warden. Can you just clarify for me this 23,000? Because I see the two options, it's 45 and 15. So what, are you adding the 8,000 to the 15?
Yes.
But you're saying 15 without funding? Because the 8,000 is the pump, which is something totally separate. But Chris was saying that the landowner is responsible for that 8,000, so that wouldn't be in our project. So if we get funding, it would be less than 15. It wouldn't be 23 and 15.
I believe he was speaking of the homeowner's cost specifically, that's why he was lumping in the 8,000. Under each scenario, what would the homeowner be responsible for in the case where it's partially funded and in a case where it isn't?
If we did this through like gas tax funding, we would look after the 60,000. The homeowner would be responsible for the 8. And only the 8. But you're saying the homeowner's responsible for the 15?
As I read the bylaw presently, it doesn't seem like it's worded to allow the county to pay 100% of that capital cost.
Okay, I was wondering where the numbers were coming from, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
You're welcome.
On item 5D on the agenda, street lighting update.
That's Chris again.
Back to Chris.
Thank you. So this one is a briefing note. I do apologize, it's taken some time to come back to council. So prior to the new year, municipal council had requested that we research streetlight policies in other municipal units, specifically to determine how they deal with requests for street lighting on private roads. So my staff did investigate, and they went through 26 other municipal units, a combination of municipalities and towns. And what they found was that 9 of 26 did not provide street lighting on private roads. 3 of 26 did, although some with restrictions such as the minimum number of permanent full-time residents. And 14 of 26 did not have a policy, bylaw, or did not specify how private roads were treated. So the table that was included in the back does give more detail, but that is what we found in our review, at least for 26 municipal units, smaller sized. We're bringing that to council for your consideration and how you might like to look at the policy and whether or not you want to consider revising it to accommodate requests for private roads.
Comments, questions?
Yes.
Councilor Boucher?
Thank you, Warden. Thank you very much for the report, Chris. This is a very sticky situation here. When somebody builds in a subdivision, they start paying taxes to us, the same as anybody else. The only problem I have with this is if you're going to street light a street in a going to a sub, the only way I want to do it is going to the subdivision on a private road. We would have to look at the number, whether it's 20, 30, or 50% of the lots developed, completely and being built on before we get any taxes. So I don't know. I guess we're going to have to sit down with that and decide, we're going to have to do something at the end of the day because they're taxpayers like everybody else. But I don't want to, put street lighting in for a subdivider that doesn't develop these lots. For one, if we got to put 15 street lights in to service each road and he only sells 1 or 2 lots, then, it's a big bill to us. So, but I do have people that are, calling me all the time for street lighting. A lot of people now starting to build apartments. And to me if I build an apartment, I should secure my property myself with lighting, not expect the rest of the taxpayers to do it. But for residential properties, single-family dwellings, I think we we have to look, but we have to look at the same laws we have now, every second pole and things like that. So I think it's something we all have to sit down with and decide which way we want to go with. We'll have to change the bylaw we have now, or the street lighting law.
Yeah, it's a policy, President.
Or the policy, yeah. We'll have to do that too. But I firmly believe that we have to do something with it. It's, those are taxpayers like everybody else. And, it's the same as picking up the garbage. That's up to the garbage collector if he wants to go up 90-degree hill or something. But at the end of the day, they pay taxes too. So, thanks, Chris.
You're welcome.
Councillor Goyash?
I guess Councillor Boucher almost answered my question. I think it's something that we have to refer to our bylaw committee. And I got a problem with not determining what's a private road compared to a public road. Are the J-class roads that we have existing in Richmond County right now, they're considered public roads, right?
That's correct.
The J-class. Now, if we got a subdivision, like Councillor Boucher states, it depends how developed that subdivision is. And I think that's something we have to determine in a bylaw, that do we provide street lighting for a subdivision where there's 10 homes, and then don't provide a subdivision street lighting where there was only 3? So what do we regard a proper lighting for a subdivision? And we got to be very careful, because it doesn't matter if there's 10 or 15 homes, they pay taxes, but you have 5 people in the subdivision, they also pay taxes. So we got to be very careful how we determine who qualifies under a private road for street lighting. And I think it's something that has to be referred to our bylaw committee, whereby we can determine the proper process to follow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ward. Well, my take on this, I was one that a resident from my district has a subdivision, and they had a request for 2 lights. Now, I don't agree with if a subdivision road is put in, we put a light on every pole. The request was actually for the homes that were built. They wanted a light at their driveway, or the nearest pole to their driveway. That's all. They're taxpayers, and I always say people get garbage pickup and streetlights for their taxes. So I don't care where the road is. If they request a light by their driveway, I feel all taxpayers should be entitled to that. I mean, in no way was this request for a street light on every pole in this subdivision. Not at all. It was just for the homes that are built right now or close to being finished, and they wanted a street light at their pole. And I, for sure, will support those kind of requests. I don't care what road it's on. People deserve one, at the driveway of their home. So I'll make a motion, if there's no more comments, that we refer this to the bylaw committee on Monday evening, and we discuss this and make some changes to this. You're happy with that recommendation, are you, or that motion?
I'm having deja vu all over again here, and it's not good.
So
I want to be very clear about this one.
This motion is to bring it to the bylaw committee meeting Monday evening to discuss with a recommendation that will come to council. We have information that others do have bylaws, don't have bylaws, don't do it, and do it. I think it's up to us to make a decision what we're going to do. It's been done in the past, and I still think that we need to continue that, to some limit, for sure. Thank you.
So it's been moved by the Deputy Warden that the streetlight bylaw be revisited at our bylaw committee on Monday night. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Martel. Discussion on the motion.
Thank you, Gordon. I guess what my problem would be, Councillor Marchung is very generous. He's going to put a street light at everybody's driveway. Well, the policy is that they go on every second pole. They don't go on everybody's driveway. Either that or we'll have 8,000 people in Richmond County looking for a street light at their driveway. So if you have a subdivision and you have two houses on two lots, adjoining lots, you're not going to put two streetlights there. That's not what the policy says. The policy says every second pole. So if it comes 2 poles before he gets to that driveway, that's fine. But the next door neighbor doesn't get one too, unless it's the one past the driveway.
Yeah, that's all things to certainly
Yeah,
have
have to be
topics
trashed.
of discussion for that
That's right,
meeting as well.
yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Further comments? Question's been called on the motion. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Motion carried. Item 6 on the agenda, Arishat Revitalization Project funding announcement, and I will just read something for the audience and for the public. So we would like to invite all of the public to a funding announcement being held here at the municipal office. Council and staff of the municipality of the County of Richmond invite you to attend a special event to announce and celebrate the Arishat Main Street Revitalization Project. Member of Parliament for Cape Breton Canso, Roger Cuzner, on behalf of the Honourable Navdeep Bains, Minister of Innovation, Science and Economic Development, and Minister responsible for the Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency, will be in attendance to make an important announcement. This is happening this Thursday, January 17th, 2019 at 11 a.m. Location is in the municipal office foyer. If anybody would require or would like to have any further information, they are asked to contact Yvonne Boudreau, our municipal clerk, at 902-226-3971 or at email yboudreau@richmondcounty.ca. Item 7 on the agenda, and this is for information purposes, Nova Scotia Association of Realtors regarding a deed transfer tax policy. I will read through this note that we got just to make the public aware. It is dated January 2nd, 2019. The Nova Scotia Association of Realtors represents more than 1,500 members throughout the province who are dedicated to improving the quality of life for everyone who lives and works here. We are pleased to partner with strong leaders who recognize the important social, environmental, and economic impacts of the real estate industry on our communities. Realtors in Nova Scotia have been lobbying municipal and provincial government officials to amend deed transfer tax, for short DTT, policies. Realtors propose the municipalities either waive the DTT for first-time buyers on the purchase of their home or extend the DTT payment period over 5 years. Each of these options can be tailored to suit the respective needs of municipalities. For municipalities, a change in collection of the DDT would reduce budget fluctuations if chosen to spread the payment over 5 years and would permit appropriate fiscal planning. For first-time home buyers, waiving the tax ease financial burdens at the time of purchase and encourage home buying in your municipality and our province. Extending the payment period of DTT will allow housing acquisition costs to be spread out over a number of years, as DTT payments can equal up to 1/3 of a 5% down payment for first-time buyers. In 2018, new homeowners have boosted their local economies through spin-off spending, which averages $44,150 per transaction in Nova Scotia, plus an increased property tax base. Nova Scotian homeowners will also contribute an estimated $29.9 million in municipal taxes throughout the province in 2018. In the new year, realtors from your community will reach out to schedule one-on-one conversations and offer council presentations on the proposal. I encourage you to consider our proposal and how it can benefit your community and your provincial economy. If you have any questions, please reach out to Paige Hovling, NSAR's Government Relations Coordinator, at 902-468-5764 or at email phovling@nsar.ns.ca. We look forward to speaking with you about stimulating your local market and attractive new residents to your community. So that was, again, just for information purposes. So we expect that we may be hearing from one of the people involved in this organization to come and do a presentation to council. In your package, item 8 on the agenda, you did have a list of checks. So if there are any issues with any of the checks, people can approach myself or the CAO or Yvonne if you have any specific questions with regards to any of those. We did not have any items added to the agenda. I would like to make just one more announcement here. There was a federal cabinet shuffle today, and there was good news for Nova Scotia. Nova Scotia MP Bernadette Jordan is the new Minister of Rural Economic Development. She was formerly the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Democratic Institutions. She is the only Nova Scotia federal minister. Minister Jordan said, quote, open quote, "The rural reality is very different than the urban reality," close quote. She noted that she understood the challenges of small municipal units, particularly the lack of strong broadband and internet and the need for stronger rural connections. Also, it was welcoming to hear she wants to work on developing a rural economic strategy. So some common lingo there for sure for folks in this municipality. Item 10 on the agenda, 15-minute question period. If anybody would like to approach council, please do so. Okay, good.
Robbie Fougere, Better de Gras. With reference to the strategic plan, I'd have a couple of questions and maybe one comment. The comment first would be, the document is ready, I understand, but it's not a public document yet.
Correct.
And it will not become a public document until it's approved. At which time, in my mind anyway, it will be too little too late. Once the document is approved, as a ratepayer, I have no input whatsoever, although I was asked to provide input at these sessions that were held throughout the county, and I attended those, yes. But there's a difference between attending one of those sessions and seeing a document in writing. And I think if you, as councillors, wanted real input, it seems to me it's at this point that you would make that document public so that one or many people could provide input on that final or that draft document. It seems to me that if you delay that opportunity, we will not have an opportunity to see a written document. The document will be written. It is written now, from what I understand. The only thing is, I will not be privy to it until after the fact. And, it begs the question, why? Or why not circulate it prior to your regular meeting where residents could make informed comments, having seen the document. And that's a question I leave with you. I'm not expecting an answer. It's more something for you to think about. In that questionnaire that I filled out way back then, there was a question on it, and this is the second point, there was a question on it about elected wardens. And I'm assuming that that will be in the final document again.
Yep.
Okay, that's very well. That's my second point, I guess. And if you permit me, I have a third point. I was wanting to know how many applicants there were for the position of strategic plan writer. If that's something you can give me. How many applicants were there for that position of strategic plan writer? I understood that you hired a strategic plan writer.
There was a writer that was hired,
Are you able to tell me how many applicants there were for that job?
I know there was two, I don't know if there was three.
Okay. Two or three, yeah. I know.
Okay, so that was advertised.
We went up for quotes, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Any further questions from the gallery? No further questions from the gallery? There's no in camera this evening, no? No. Okay. Let's move. Councillor Boucher moved to adjourn. Seconder? Seconded by Councillor Martel. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Thank you.